Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be going over one of the staves. We've already covered Rod of Capeleke, but this is another one of the unique staves. It's called Sepazontec. The Sepazontec staff is a pretty amazing staff for basic builds, and we're going to be going over like how it changes the basic builds and what you can get out of it. It may not be as strong as Rod of Capeleke, but there are some really fun builds that you can do with this. And I think if you give it a try, you'll definitely see some of them. I'm going to show off one of mine, which is the Withering Fist build. But I'm missing my my Andariel's Visage. It's over on another character. But right now, the Sepazontec staff itself is a quarterstaff. The quarterstaffs do have a really nice implicit of 45% increased block chance, which does feed really well into the interdiction bonus, which gives you a critical strike damage based on your block chance, and then you get like the block chance gives you an increase in by your resolve stacks. I mean, there's a whole lot of that you can do with block chance in this game. One of them is to increase your critical strike damage, which gives you a lot of additional bonus. And having the quarterstaff right off the bat gives you pretty much like half your block chance that you're going to have. In fact, I think, I don't know what my block chance is right now, but I'm already at 100%, like easily. I'm well over 100% actually. I'm pretty sure, which is good because there is an aspect that takes advantage of your block chance, and so having more than 100% block chance is good to feed into that if you're trying to do that particular build. We also have a greater affix on here of 460 dexterity, but it is 242 without the greater affix. We also have the lucky hit, basic lucky hit skill chance, which is only up to 6% on the regular item, but does go up pretty high once you get the greater affix. It's not really like too important, but if you are trying to do, say, like Andy's, which is a lucky hit proc, or some of the other lucky hit builds, I mean, every lucky hit bonus that you can get is going to be helpful. Usually with these lucky hit bonuses, if they're conditional like this, like they show basic lucky hit, they don't show up on the tooltip usually. But this one it looks like does. So you can see here it says 37% lucky hit chance, and the tooltip will actually calculate that 9.9% in and add it to the ability. So it is actually giving me a total of, what is that, 7, 8, 9. So about 2%. It might even be like an odd number, but it's about 2% on the actual lucky hit chance of the ability for that 9.9 that I'm getting there. It also has a really nice effect of up to 35% basic skills to deal double damage, which is going to cover all of your basic skills. And it also has a nice greater affix of 52.5. You can get that up really high. As you can see on mine, that's masterwork 10 times. I'm currently at 66.5% chance. So pretty easy to get that up to 100 if you wanted to, say, like focus some of the 25% bonuses on it. We also have this really nice follow-through bonus of 2 to 4, and follow-through is one of the passives on the board. If you get a greater affix, it goes really high. As you can see mine right here on this one with a 25% bonus and 10 masterworks is all up to 10. My current bonus on follow-through is ridiculous. It's currently 13. And basically how follow-through works is you get a bonus to the basic skills, basically multiplying their damage, and you also get another bonus which is essentially doubled for third casts, so you get 52% multiplier, as you can see there, for the third cast. Now what does it mean by the third cast? This is a really interesting thing that I had to like go through and learn about, and it's an odd topic because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it does make sense once you understand it better. So the ability itself, and let me pull any staff out of here. It doesn't really matter what it is. Let's just pull a pole arm out so we can put that on for the time being. Now, when you utilize a basic skill, the basic skill has a regular attack that hits the target, a regular attack that hits the target, and it also has a regular attack that hits the target. So it's 3 regular attacks that hit the target. Now, these 3 regular attacks are not subject to the double multiplier. So from what I've been able to tell, when it says the third cast gets the bonus, what it is referring to specifically is the third cast effect, which is not restricted to the actual ability. I know it sounds kind of weird, but let me kind of show you what I mean. So if I'm facing away from the training dummy and I attack 3 times, you'll notice that the poison effect is an AoE, and the poison effect can hit the monster irrespective of the actual melee hits, despite the fact that I'm not hitting the training dummy at all with the Withering Fist. Now, when you utilize the Sepazontec, the Withering Fist gains the third strike for every single ability. However, it also gives you a second third strike, which then becomes your new third strike, and the third strike itself just simply becomes your first and second strike, which I know is confusing as all get out, but it makes sense if you think about it. So the third strike, the original third strike, just simply becomes your regular attack. And it's also still separate from your regular strike. So when you're attacking regularly like this and you're not hitting the monster, now you're going to have this third strike always happening, and you're going to be able to apply that poison damage to the target even if you're not actually hitting the target. Now the interesting thing here is that they're both separate from each other in how they function. So if I go back to the polearm for a second here, you'll see that if I attack the monster with my regular Withering Fist, like without using the third attack, you can see it still does damage, and it has its own separate mechanic entirely. So you do have to actually be within range to get the melee hit, and then the Sepazontec is then creating a secondary function, which is it's allowing the basic or the third attack to become a new form that's added on top. Now this gets even more complicated when we talk about some of the ways that the basic skills function. So we did a lot of testing, Thorns testing, and all sorts of other things, and one of the things we came to a conclusion on was that, like for instance, with the accelerated rock splitter, you get a third attack that applies 100% of your Thorns. Well, the third attack that applies 100% of your Thorns is completely separate from the way that the ability works. And oftentimes, like putting points or taking points out of the ability itself would not have any effect or change anything as far as the damage of the ability. I know it sounds kind of weird, but when you're putting points into Withering Fist, you're increasing the damage of the ability itself. You're not increasing the damage of the third attack. The third attack is like a separate function of the way that the ability works. And you can play around with this. You can test it yourself. You can basically put on weapons, take off weapons, put in skill points, take off skill points, and play around with the way that the ability works. But the damage of the actual third attack kind of just stays the same. And I can demonstrate this.
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
Let's go ahead and pull some points from Withering Fist here. And we need a couple points to spend, so let's pull some from the Hunter for the second. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a Rock Splitter and we're going to throw this into the mix. And we're basically just going to utilize this to get the special effect. So as you can see, we're getting about, what is that, 23 to 256k. And I'm not actually hitting the target. I'm just using the special effect. So 311. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stack points into the ability. So I'm going to fill it up with 5 points here. And you can see I'm getting 315k, 300k. There was a 580, so not bad. Now, a lot of this comes from spamming the ability as fast as I can to get my modifiers. So let me make sure I don't do that. We got to isolate the test here. All right. Actually, probably just spam it. That's probably a good thing to do. We'll just spam it. That way we can get all the multipliers in there, and then we know what the true top end is. So 892k. That was our biggest top end hit. Oh, we got a 1 million. Am I using Jaguar? I am using Jaguar. Jaguar is going to mess with the test, so we're going to pull this. Yeah, let's pull this just for the second so it's not messing with the test. Because it does add a huge multiplicative every 15 hits. So 299k, 278k, 406. Alright, so the highest I'm seeing is a 406. So let's go ahead and drop the 5 points back in. And let's see if we can top the 406. As you can see here, the 4 extra points that I put into the ability don't seem to have any effect on the third strike, is basically what I'm trying to demonstrate for you here. You know, it's more than just simply telling you. I want you to see exactly how this functions. And when you see that you can't really increase your damage by putting points into the skill as far as the third strike is concerned, then you start to understand that the third strike is a different function, essentially, than the actual, like, ability, right? And every single ability has different ways that it is affected by this. So let's play around with this. So first off, if you're using Rock Splitter by itself without Sepazontec, you're going to get this effect, which is you're going to attack, and then it's going to do a kind of like a little like dancing spin. I don't really know how to explain it. It kind of looks like a dancing spin. Now the dancing spin can actually be increased in size tremendously. So if you are going to run this build, you can make it quite ginormous. However, when you put Sepazontec on, what you're going to notice is you're going to get the spin every single time, and you're also going to get 3 spins on the third attack, which is going to give you 3 pumps of that damage output. This is obviously separate from the actual skill, but you can also attack with the skill itself. So obviously if you're within melee range, you're also going to get the melee attack along with the little spin explosions. And that's just Rock Splitter. So Rock Splitter is one of the basics. We also have Thunder Spike. Thunder Spike is interesting too, because Thunder Spike goes from a single bump, which isn't really all that amazing. And if you pay attention to it, it's actually an eagle. It's kind of hard to see, but it's actually in the shape of an eagle. It's like Batman always using like batarangs that are in the shape of a bat. Like, I'm not even joking. And Thunder Spike is probably one of the least impressive basic skills. However, when you put on the Sepazontec, it goes from a single strike to triple strikes on the third one, which actually does make it a lot more interesting. You can also get Thunder Spike size, and you can increase the size of this attack tremendously. There's also a passive on here that allows the third strike to pull in enemies and knock them down if they're distant from you. So combined with the Sepazontec and the size increase, you could definitely set this up so that you could pull in the monsters relatively easily. The other side doesn't have anything to do with Sepazontec and isn't affected by Sepazontec at all. It basically just makes it so that when you evade, it will attack with it as you're evading. Oh, I was wrong. It does actually interact with Sepazontec. Well, I am a fool. I did not know that. Wait a minute. It's activating the evade cooldown reduction? Is it activating the evade cooldown reduction? Or is that just my imagination? I think it's activating the evade cooldown reduction. That was not something that I was aware of. Which is why I always like to test things. Let's go test this out here. I'm not sure if that evade cooldown reduction thing may be a function of the training room itself. So I just want to make sure. Wow, it's literally infinite evades. Ow! Stop biting. Biter. Rude. It is important to note, however, that when you utilize this, it actually does use up your brilliance. So if you're utilizing acceleration is the passive that gives you one additional evade charge, but it also gives you a multiplier whenever you evade. One of the things that I noticed about this is that if you're utilizing the Thunder Spike evade, it will automatically use this multiplier for the attack that Thunder Spike uses. So as you're evading, it literally automatically burns the acceleration multiplier. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to use that multiplier for something, like say you want to use it for, I don't know, your quill volley or something along those lines, you're definitely going to be in a situation where you're going to want to maybe not use Thunder Spike with the basic action. It's rather interesting to find out, though, that it does actually work with Sepazontec. I was unaware of that. I mean, it obviously is attacking 3 times. Not only are you getting the initial pump, but you're also getting the triple. That could be the basis of an entire build. That could be really fun. That is not bad at all. But moving on. We also have Thrash. Now, Thrash is interesting because Thrash also has the same kind of components, which is a third attack that has this like crazy thing going on. And let me show you what it looks like without the ability. So if you're utilizing Thrash by itself, you get 2 regular attacks, and then you get this like, I don't even know what to call it. It's like a thing that like is in the air, and it's just like slashing outward from like a void. And the void that's slashing out of it is essentially just going to hit the monsters multiple times while you are not even looking at the monster. So if you use this in the place where a monster is, it just continually attacks. There's also a passive on here that allows you to keep that running as long as you keep attacking. So as long as you're attacking, you can increase the duration of the third attack by a massive degree, allowing you to have multiple of these active at any given time, which allows you to get even more damage out of the Thrash ability. But even further, if you're utilizing the Sepazontec, you can get a ridiculously large number of these. Because instead of spawning just one of them, and now it's going to spawn 3 of them. And as you can clearly see by the ridiculous number that I currently have on the screen, using Sepazontec, you can get some pretty crazy numbers of these Thrash things up here. And of course, every single one of these is doing its own damage, including the Thrash ability itself, which is also hitting the target. And you can increase the size of these, making them way bigger. They do really good AoE damage, but they don't really do very high, like, single target damage, from what I've noticed. It's kind of like the exact opposite of what I thought. I thought it was going to be really fast attacks that would be very single target, but they ended up being very AoE instead, which is a little odd. But you can definitely make some very powerful Thrash builds as well. And then there's finally Withering Fist, which we kind of already covered because, you know, that was the first ability that we were utilizing. Withering Fist is very clear in that it gives you 1 poison puddle. And then when you're utilizing the Sepazontec, you get 3 poison puddles. They go in a straight line outward, and there is an overlap to them if you pay attention. So there is this like section in the center between the circles where you can definitely hit a target with more than 1 circle. I've also kind of noticed that depending on your range, so like you don't actually have to be in melee range, obviously. You can just simply like attack from a distance and let the poison puddles just hit them from far away. You do miss out on the physical damage of the ability, but I mean, it's neither here nor there. It depends on how you're setting up the character. Withering Fist is also really strong in that it seems to be very fast. It's kind of hard to explain just how fast Withering Fist is, but hopefully that gives you some kind of idea. It's kind of nuts. That's not even like full speed. And I'm switch that back before I forget. Now, the special effects on Sepazontec definitely makes it amazing. It's your basic skills deal 100% increased damage and always use their third attack, which is what we just went over. And every third cast of the basic skill strikes 3 times. So when you're talking about the basics, you can definitely get some interesting stuff going on with these. There's also an aspect which kind of flows along with the Sepazontec, which is called combined strikes. And I'm going to go ahead and show you combined strikes real quick. There was an original build that I haven't really finished playing around with, but could eventually come back. I'm looking for a perfect combined strikes before I want to like dive into that one. But combined strikes allows you to get a pretty huge damage bonus for using basically any basic skill. So you can get up to 15% increased damage to everything for every basic skill that you cast within 10 seconds. You only have to cast them one time, and then it's 10 seconds until you have to recast them. Obviously, there's 4 basic skills, and even if you're using like Kapeleke, you could potentially get 6 basic skills. So that's 4 times 15 or 6 times 15, depending on how you want to set it up. And the entire goal would just be to have like every basic skill on your bar. I mean, they are moderately useful. You can easily use Rock Splitter to build Resolve. You can easily use Thrash to build Ferocity, so you don't need any Resolve or Ferocity building on other, things. You can also use Withering Fist to poison all the monsters, and Thunder Spike kind of works to pull in monsters. It's not really the best pull in, but it does work as a pull in. It can also be used in your evasion, which is also a whole other thing. So you could just like run around every time you evade. You can also trigger it, and it does actually activate combined strikes. So there's also that. Sepazontec is a staff that comes from specific bosses. And let's pull that up real quick so I can give you guys an idea of where you can farm this. And I usually hop over to Diablo 4.life. We got a little tool on here, the target farming uniques. And then we go down here, Spiritborn, Sepazontec, and as you can see, it drops from Duriel, the Maggot King, and Andariel, Maiden of Anguish. It's pretty common from these. It's also not the main staff that everybody is using this season, so you might even be able to just pick one up for relatively cheap on a trade site, if that's what you're looking for. I also was able to get one relatively early on in the season just by simply gambling them. The Purveyor of Curiosities is absolutely amazing for gambling items, especially if you are utilizing the season buff, which is the Purveyor of Curiosities buff, which gives you a chance to receive a second item whenever you're gambling from the Purveyor of Curiosities. It's absolutely amazing, by the way. And you can pretty much just gamble quarterstaffs and usually end up with a Sepazontec. I have like 4 or 5 Sepazontecs in my inventory right now. And I also managed to get myself this absolutely beautiful Sepazontec, which is insane. And I've been playing around with a bunch of builds all using this item. It does have some flavor text on it. It says, "To the silent skies, the hunter Etzlek raised his staff and then smote the Newman. Release her," came his cries, as he desecrated the hallowed ground. On the third strike, the spirit answered. I have a feeling that Sepazontec is probably going to be the best staff for Spiritborn come Season 7, after they nerf the ever-loving crap out of the Kapeleke, which is probably coming. There's so many bugs with the Spiritborn right now, and the Spiritborn is so far past all the other characters. It's going to be funny when the Spiritborn falls back to the, like the angel falling from heaven like Tyrael. But the Sepazontec, I don't think, is going to be affected by most of these fixes. It's still going to be very powerful, regardless of a lot of the bugs that are currently in place. And there's a lot of fun builds that you can do. Obviously, you can do Withering Fist, Rock Splitter. You can do Thunder Spike. You can also do the Thrash. You can do combinations of those. There's actually some pretty interesting combinations in how they work. Like, you can easily do 2 bare minimum, like if you wanted to throw Rock Splitter and Sepazontec together. There's an entire build through the Rock Splitter, which has to do with the accelerated Rock Splitter that allows you to apply Thorns damage to your enemies. And from the Thorns testing that I've done with the accelerated Rock Splitter, it does actually get affected by basic skill damage, which is interesting. However, it doesn't get any additional Thorns added to it, which is also kind of weird. So like if you have the Gorilla Spirit Hall choice or anything like that, it doesn't actually add any Thorns to that. It does add Thorns to the main melee hit, which is separate from the like spinning. So it's kind of hard to explain it all because I did like a large amount of testing with Thorns. And you know what? Let me just bring up my Thorns notepad that I've got, which all my Thorns testing on it, so you guys can see it from here. So this, I did like a buttload of Thorns testing, and basically what I found out was a lot. Like Brilliance doesn't work with Thorns, Acceleration doesn't work with Thorns, Supremacy does, Apex does, Vulnerable added bonus does, the generic added bonus does, damage to elites does, your Dexterity generic multiplier does, Unrestrained does, Potent does. The third attack on Thrash does not. Balanced Exertion does not. Mystic Circle Jaguar, yes. Fist of Fate, yes. Berserk, no. Ring of the Starless Skies does. Quill Volley does work with Thorns, like Spirit Hall Thorns bonuses, but only one time, not for every single Quill. It only gives you one pump of the damage. Crushing Hand, same thing, only one pump of the damage. The Legendary Spirit Hall can be increased by a massive amount. By the way, I was testing that out, and it was looking like you can get 132% from a weapon and 100% from the Loyalties Helmet, which is 232%, plus the original 100%, so you can get about 332% Thorns added to all of your attacks through the Legendary Gorilla Spirit Hall. However, like I said, that does not get added to the actual ability. Skill ranks don't seem to add any damage whatsoever to Thorns attacks. They don't seem to be tied to the skill ranks on the ability at all. And I demonstrated that earlier as well. Thorns is overriding other damage output. I thought that this was the case at first, and I actually need to fix this. So Thorns is in addition to other damage output, but in its own separate hit. I originally thought it wasn't adding to the damage, but now that I've seen it, it's actually just giving you two separate hits. So the Thorns actually just hits as a separate function, completely different from the actual hit of the ability. It doesn't add into the ability, which is what I had originally thought. Unyielding hits does also not increase the Thorns damage at all. You would think that the unyielding hits might add in to the hit for the Thorns, but it doesn't add into the hit for the Thorns. It seems to be separate. And there's like even more stuff that I tested that I probably just don't even have written down here. I'm probably going to do an entire Thorns video because this video is not for Thorns specifically, but it is something that I do want to cover eventually. I think that pretty much covers everything for the Sepazontec. It is a very complicated and very interesting weapon that can be used across like at least 4 builds, if not way more than 4 builds. I would probably multiply that by like 5 at the very least, because there's so many different ways that you can build them. Like Withering Fist can be built for poison dot damage with like the Shattered Vow, or it could be built with like Critical Strike and, you know, like overpower damage using the Noxious Resonance. You could build Thrash, you could build Rock Splitter, you could build Rock Splitter with Thorns, you could build Thunder Spike, you could build Thunder Spike Evade. You know, there's like, at the very least, there's like 2 or 3 different ways that you could do every single one of the basics, if not more, including running all the basics at one time. So, yeah. Anyway, as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And as always, keep watching.